Welcome to this webinar on the 2022 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines. My name is Lauren Gomez and I am the Curriculum and Instruction Specialist for the ECE Division and can be your contact for any questions relating to the PKG rollout. The guidelines are available through the ECE Division Prekindergarten Guideline webpage. This webinar will give you an overview of key revisions made from the 2015 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines to the new 2022 Prekindergarten Guidelines. Although we will discuss overall changes made to the documents, we will review key revisions to PK4 outcomes only in this webinar. Objectives. Our objectives for today include understanding the intended use of the Prekindergarten Guidelines, the review of overall revisions from the 2015 to the 2022 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines, including accessibility, usability, length of documents, and content updates. We will review format updates including design elements, domain skills revisions, design of the outcomes tables, and revisions to child behaviors. We will review key updates per domain, including interpretation that will assist with implementation in the classroom of PK4 outcomes only. And finally, we will review supportive documents such as translated documents in Spanish and Vietnamese, streamlined versions, and side-by-side documents. The information on the following slides will cover the intended use of the Prekindergarten Guidelines. All of the information is found in the Introduction section of the 2022 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines. The Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines provide guidance for planning quality learning experiences for children ages 3 to 5. Some important things to note are that the Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines are designed to help educators identify the types of knowledge and skills that are typical of pre-K age children. They are to be used with the note in mind that there is considerable variability in development among children. They are intended to help with implementing effective instructional practices and learning experiences, and they are designed as a resource to inform decisions that pertain to curriculum and instruction. Ultimately, the Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines are not intended to be used as a curriculum, assessment tool, or checklist. They are not meant to be used in isolation or to stifle the creativity of caregivers and educators. Rather, they are meant to serve as a resource for families, educators, and administrators to provide developmentally appropriate guidance and practices around young children's development and learning in the pre-kindergarten environment. While work was done to remove as much subjective language from the outcomes, there are outcomes that may use the child begins to or child typically uses due to the fact that children at this age are developing these skills. As mentioned in the statement on this slide, the guidelines are not to be used as an assessment tool, but instead to help inform instruction in the classroom. Outcomes are included in all domains for PK4, while 4 domains do not include outcomes for PK3. As stated in the intro section of the guidelines, it does not mean that children of this age group should not participate in the experiences related to the learning outcomes, but rather the focus should be on engaging 3-year-olds in the beginning stages of exploration of these concepts. This exposure will support children to develop a solid foundation of understanding, which will allow them to build and deepen their knowledge as they continue to learn and grow. Although we are reviewing PK4 outcomes in this webinar, we want early childhood educators of pre-K 3-year-old programs to still be familiar with the PK4 outcomes in the 4 domains to make instructional decisions about appropriate experiences and activities that could be provided for 3-year-olds. Revision Overview. The 2022 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines were created with the following revisions. Accessibility. The format was updated to meet 508 compliance. Usability. There is now a condensed introduction with primary focus on guiding principles and inclusive practices, and best practice content taken from the introductory section of the 2015 Prekindergarten Guidelines will be provided in a digital format tentatively set to publish in early spring. The length page has been reduced from 139 pages in the 2015 version to 87 pages in the 2022 comprehensive version. Revisions to content include inclusive language for multilingual learners and special populations, alignment to kindergarten TEKS, improved clarity and specificity, which includes editing of grammatical errors and elimination of repetition, and the domain names have not changed except for adding emergent literacy to language and communication. Updates. The overall format and style of the new pre-kindergarten guidelines includes a colorful design with icons and color style that correlate to specific domains. The overall look of the comprehensive guide was created with easy accessibility and referencing in mind. Domains and skills updates. Domain names have not changed except for adding emergent literacy to language and communication. You can see the example formatting below. Some examples have been renamed to align to kindergarten TEKS, such as speech production to articulation, adding taking away to joining and separating, print concepts to concepts of print, and counting skills to number sense. Outcome table and child behaviors. Format changes to the outcomes is presented in a streamlined 2-column table, and child behaviors have been condensed to 3 to 5 examples that support both PK3 and PK4 outcomes. When reviewing child behaviors, it was the intent to list them in a scaffolded manner and to not identify outcomes specific to 3 or 4-year-olds due to the considerable variability of the development among children as stated in the introduction. It is also important to note that the child behaviors are examples that explain the competency of the outcome. They are not exhaustive of what a child may be able to demonstrate. Rather, they are behaviors that a child may demonstrate towards competency of the outcome. We will now review key content revisions to PK4 outcomes only. We first want to share our support and implementation plan. The webinars are designed to share content revisions that have been made in the guidelines in addition to the explanation for the changes that were made. Our pre-kindergarten guideline documents will help guide implementation and demonstrated proficiency, especially as you independently review the child behaviors. Our office hours are designed for more specific questions that will also support with the new guideline implementation. Dates are listed on the slide for February, and documents and registration information for the office hours can be found at our PK guideline webpage. There will be additional support offered throughout 2023. The social and emotional development domain has 8 key revisions. Here are the key revisions to the skills section of self-concept. Changes made to 1A2 include specifying age-appropriate abilities and skills as demonstration of physical attributes, personal preferences, and own abilities. This removes any ambiguous interpretation and allows children to demonstrate proficiency through specific means. Changes made to 1A4 include specifying independent situation as trying new activities. This clarifies the action of solving problems to overcoming obstacles and challenges. Here are the key revisions for the skills section of self-regulation. Changes made to 1B2B specify that communication can be served through verbal and nonverbal means. Changes made to 1B3B specify that group activities are teacher-led. Here are the key revisions for the skills section of relationships with peers. 1C1 changes include the addition of the use of communication skills with peers and not just adults. This supports the skill in that communication is also important in building relationships with peers. Changes made to 1C5 include specifying the action of using problem-solving strategies when experiencing conflicts with others and not using problem-solving strategies in general. Changes made to 1C7 specifies that the child has preferred friends and not just may have preferred friends as stated in the 2015 outcome. Here is the revision to the skill section, social awareness. 1D1 includes the addition of being able to demonstrate similar perspectives and feelings of others rather than just different perspectives of others. The Emergent Literacy, Language, and Communication domain has 6 key outcome revisions. Here are the key revisions to the skill area of listening comprehension and articulation. Changes made to 2A1 clarified that the child can show understanding when responding to adults and peers. Changes made to 2C1 include the addition that speech can be understood by peers and not just adults. This supports the communicative experiences made between peers. Here are the revisions made within the skill area of vocabulary. Changes to 2D1 specified that the ability to use words can be through receptive and expressive means. It added the ability to make connections to those words as well as to events. Changes to 2D2 specified that the child can demonstrate understanding of instructional language through receptive and expressive means. Changes to 2D3 clarifies that the comprehension and use of vocabulary in the classroom setting through books, conversations, and play. It also removes the number of words a child needs to know in order to focus on the progression of skill and intentional use of words used in the classroom. Please note that the new outcome was a combination of 2 2015 outcomes in order to reduce redundancy. Here is the revision made within the skill area of sentences and structure. Changes to 2E3 clarified that the type of sentences used can combine phrases or ideas. The Emergent Literacy Reading domain has 12 major revisions. The Emergent Literacy Reading domain has 12 key revisions. Here are the first half of the revisions for the skill area of phonological awareness. 3B1 was revised to specify the identification of individual words in a sentence and removes the requirement of meeting the skill within a 4-word sentence as listed in the previous outcome. 3B2 was originally located in 2C2 in the speech production subskill of the language and communication domain. It was moved here because it is a phonological awareness skill. 3B3 clarifies the action of a child creating a compound word from 2 familiar base words, such as using the words sun and flower to make sunflower. We also added the addition of using pictorial or gestural supports. 3B4 changed skill from just deleting a word from a compound word to manipulating compound words. It also added the use of pictorial or gestural supports. Here are the second half of the revisions for the subskill area of phonological awareness. 3B5 was revised to allow for the beginning demonstration of the skill to blend and segment syllables and words. This outcome is a combination of the original 3B4 and 3B5 and was also revised to align to the language in the kindergarten TEKS. 3B7 was revised in terms of terminology to name that the skill is alliteration. It also added the use of pictorial support. 3B8 clarified to allow modeled use of a word that is already segmented by onset and rhyme in order to identify the word through blending. 3B9 was changed to clarify the outcome. It also removed recognition of spoken phonemes. It added the skill of segmenting phonemes and added the gestural support. Here are the revisions to the skill area of alphabet knowledge. 3C1 includes the addition of the ability to recognize letters, and it was also changed to allow a combination of identification of 20 upper or 20 lowercase letters instead of 20 upper and 20 lower, which would equal 40 letters total. 3C2 was clarified to show that this skill is recognizing letter-sound correspondences. Here are the revisions in the areas of comprehension of text and concepts of print. 3D1 was specified to include the expectation of retelling or reenacting a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. 3E2 was specified to include examples of what print directionality looks like in action, such as holding a book right side up, sweeping from left to right, top to bottom, etc. The Emergent Literacy Writing domain has 4 key revisions. Here are the revisions to the skill areas of motivation to write and writing as a process. 4A2 was revised to include drawing as a primary form of communicating ideas as writing. We wanted to make sure there was flexibility in how students engage with this skill. 4B2 clarifies that this skill takes place in whole and small group settings. Here are the revisions to the skill area of conventions in writing. 4C2 clarifies the progression of writing through letter forms and letter string formation within writing. This moves away from letter-sound correspondences, which is covered in the next skill 4C3, which clarifies that children begin to write words using beginning and/or ending sounds and that those words are familiar to the child. There are 9 key revisions in the mathematics domain. Here are the revisions to the skill area of number sense. You will see that outcomes 5A, 5 through 8 are new and were added to align to kindergarten TEKS. 5A4 was changed to instantly recognizing the quantity of objects from 5 to 6. 5A5 was changed from recognizing numerals 0 to 9 to 0 to 10. 5A6 was added to provide scaffold and alignment to kindergarten standards. This outcome is representing quantities up to 10. 5A7 is another skill that has been added to align with the kindergarten standards. This outcome focuses on the skills of composing and decomposing numbers 0 to 10. 5A8 adds the skill of comparing sets of objects up to 10. Here are the skill revisions to geometry and spatial awareness. 5C1 includes the expectation of describing 2D shapes and at least one 3D shape. 5C4 clarifies the expectation of identifying a shape regardless of orientation and size. Here are the revisions to the areas of measurement and classification and patterns. 5D4 specifies the meaning of passing of time based on what is occurring within a day. Here we can think of what the child is referencing as part of the daily schedule. 5E3 includes the additions of the skills duplicates and extends to this pattern outcome. The science domain has 1 key revision. Here is the key revision made in the area of life science. This revision includes the addition of observes and discusses to align with all the other outcomes within the science domain. The social studies domain has 1 key revision. Here's the key revision in the area of people past and present. In this outcome, other children was replaced with other people. The technology domain has 2 key revisions. Here are the 2 key revisions in the area of technology and devices. 10A3 clarified that digital products are not meant to be created individually by students, but rather students are using digital applications to contribute to class-made products. 10A4 was revised to ensure that appropriate information is accessed with adult assistance. We do want to note that there are no minor or key revisions to the PK4 outcomes in the domains of fine arts and physical development. However, we do want to point out that all of the domain and skill summaries were updated, and we encourage you to read over the summaries as they provide valuable information that will also support with implementation. Supportive documents. There are several supportive resources that align to the pre-kindergarten guidelines. These include translated documents in Spanish and Vietnamese, and PK3 streamlined and PK4 streamlined versions of the guidelines as pictured in the slide. All changes made from the 2015 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines to the 2022 Texas Prekindergarten Guidelines have been created on a side-by-side document, one for PK3 outcomes only and one for PK4 outcomes only. Technical support. Here's the information for our upcoming office hours in February, where you will have the ability to ask specific questions. It also gives you time to process the revisions discussed today. All webinar information is also available on our Pre-Kindergarten Guideline webpage. If you have questions about the 2022 Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines, please contact the ECE Support Portal link on the ECE Division webpage of TEA or by scanning the QR code on this slide. You may also request access to our listserv where information about our upcoming webinars and office hours for the 2022 Texas Pre-Kindergarten Guidelines will take place in 2023. You can request to join the ECE listserv link on our ECE homepage or by scanning the QR code on this slide. As we conclude this webinar, we would like to ask for your participation in completing our survey through the QR code in order to serve and support you better with implementation of the pre-kindergarten guidelines. Thank you.